Let me start with something strange about human nature. Have you ever replayed a conversation from 3 days ago, lying in bed at 2 a.m., wondering if one sentence, one pause, one look ruined everything? Most of us have. We assume that thinking is our greatest strength, the ability to analyze, to plan, to turn things over in our minds. This is what separates us. We believe that if we just think hard enough, we will eventually think our way out of our problems. But here is the uncomfortable truth psychology has uncovered. The very same machinery we use to solve problems can easily become the machinery that traps us. Thinking can turn against the thinker. And somewhere along the way, without realizing it, we begin to believe that if we are suffering mentally, we must be making progress emotionally. We confuse the feeling of thinking with the act of solving, and this confusion has a name. We call it overthinking. But that word makes it sound like a minor habit, like biting your nails or tapping your foot. It is not a habit. It is a trance, a deep psychological state where the mind becomes a maze and you are the person walking in circles, convinced that the exit is just around the next corner. Have you ever noticed how overthinking feels productive in the moment? You replay a conversation from 3 days ago. You examine every word, every facial expression, every pause. You wonder what they really meant. You imagine what you should have said instead. You construct alternate realities where you were funnier, smarter, more in control. And in that moment, it feels like you are doing something important. It feels like you are getting closer to the truth. But you are not moving at all. You are spinning. And the reason you keep spinning is deeply psychological. Psychologists call this the repetition compulsion. It is the mind's strange tendency to return to painful experiences again and again, not because we enjoy the pain, but because we are desperately trying to master it. We believe that if we revisit the moment enough times, we will eventually land on the version of events that gives us peace. But here is the cruel trick. The peace never comes. Because the problem was never about finding the perfect response. The problem is that somewhere deep inside, you have learned to associate alertness with safety. From a psychological perspective, overthinking is not really about thinking at all. It is about control. The human mind has a low tolerance for uncertainty. Uncertainty feels like danger. And when something in your life feels unresolved, when someone's behavior confuses you, when a decision looms over you, when the future feels foggy, your brain sounds an alarm. And the alarm says, "Figure this out, or you will not be safe." So you think, and think, and think. Because thinking creates the illusion of control. It feels like you are doing something. It feels like you are building a shield against the unknown. But research suggests that this kind of repetitive thinking actually depletes your cognitive resources. It narrows your perspective. It convinces you that the problem is larger than it really is. A friend once told me they spent 2 hours rewriting a text message, choosing the perfect words, adjusting the tone, deleting and retyping. They finally sent it, heart pounding, waiting for a response that would confirm they had finally gotten it right. The reply came an hour later. One word. "Okay." All that thinking, all that energy, all that time. And the world responded with a single syllable that meant nothing and everything all at once. The strange part is this. The things we overthink most are almost always the things we cannot control. A past event that has already happened. A future event that has not yet arrived. Another person's internal experience which you will never fully know. Your mind is trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. And instead of setting the puzzle down, You blame yourself for not being smart enough to see the full picture. If you have ever been trapped inside your own mind late at night, you know what this feels like. The room is quiet. The world is asleep. But inside you, there is a storm. Thoughts do not arrive one at a time. They come in waves. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. And soon, you are not even sure what the original thought was. You are just caught in the current. Your chest feels tight. Your jaw is clenched. You are exhausted, but you cannot stop. Because stopping feels dangerous. Stopping feels like you are giving up. Stopping feels like you are leaving something unfinished, and the unfinished haunts you more than the pain of continuing. This is the hidden exhaustion of overthinking. It is not just mental fatigue, it is emotional depletion. You are carrying conversations that already ended. You are fighting battles that already passed. You are preparing for threats that may never arrive. And your nervous system does not know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. It responds the same way. It floods your body with cortisol. It keeps you in a low-grade state of vigilance. You are not living in your life. You are living in your head. But the strangest part of overthinking is something psychologists rarely talk about. The more you think about something, the less you actually understand it. Because overthinking does not clarify, it distorts. When you replay a moment over and over, you stop seeing it clearly. You start adding meaning that was never there. You interpret silence as rejection. You interpret a delayed text as disinterest. You interpret a neutral comment as a hidden insult. Psychologists call this emotional reasoning. It is the cognitive distortion where you believe that because you feel something strongly, it must be true. If you feel anxious about a relationship, you assume something is wrong with the relationship. If you feel guilty about a decision, you assume you made the wrong choice. If you feel uncertain about the future, you assume the future is dangerous. But feelings are not facts. They are signals. And when you overthink, you stop treating them as signals and start treating them as proof. The thing you fear most becomes the thing you are certain is coming. Where does this begin? Attachment theory offers one explanation. If you grew up in an environment where love felt inconsistent, where you had to earn affection, where you had to read subtle cues to stay safe, where emotional storms were unpredictable, your mind learned something important. Your mind learned that survival depends on hypervigilance. You learned to scan, to analyze, to predict. Because predicting gave you a sense of control in an environment where you had none. And that pattern does not disappear when you grow up. It becomes your default setting. You carry it into friendships, into relationships, into your career. You tell yourself you are just being careful. You tell yourself you are just thinking ahead. But really, you are just trying to feel safe in a world that feels unsafe. Overthinking is often a trauma response dressed up as intelligence. It looks like responsibility. It looks like awareness. But underneath, it is fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being blindsided. Fear of being caught off guard. And the mind believes that if it can just think of every possibility, it will never be surprised again. But life surprises anyway. There is another layer to this. For some people, overthinking becomes part of their identity. You might secretly believe that if you stopped thinking so much, you would become careless. You might believe that your overthinking is what makes you thoughtful or deep or responsible. You might believe that letting go of it means letting go of who you are. But here is what research suggests. The part of you that overthinks is not the deepest part of you. It is the protective part. It is the part that got you through difficult times. It is the part that kept you alert when you needed to be alert. And that part deserves gratitude, not rejection. But it is not the whole truth of who you are. Beneath the overthinking, there is a quieter self. A self that does not need to figure everything out. A self that can sit with uncertainty without being consumed by it. A self that trusts itself to handle whatever comes, even without a perfect plan. The problem is that you have spent so long listening to the loud voice in your head that you have forgotten the quiet one exists. What does overthinking cost you? It costs you presence. You sit across from someone you love, but you are not really there. You are thinking about what they meant earlier or what they might mean later. You miss the moment that is actually happening. It costs you action. You wait until you feel sure. You wait until you have analyzed every angle. You wait until the anxiety subsides. But the anxiety does not subside because it feeds on waiting. And the moment passes, the opportunity passes, and you are left standing exactly where you started, holding nothing but the thoughts you could not let go of. It costs you peace. Not the peace of a quiet room, but the peace of a quiet mind. The peace of knowing that you do not have to have it all figured out. The peace of trusting that some things will remain unclear, and that is okay. Have you ever noticed how the things you overthink most are often the things that matter least in the long run? A comment someone made, a mistake you cannot undo, a decision that is already made. And the things that matter most, the people in front of you, the life you are actually living, those things fade into the background while you chase thoughts that lead nowhere. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Maybe you have spent hours preparing for a conversation that never happened. Maybe you have lost sleep over a problem that resolved itself while you were distracted. Maybe you have carried guilt about something no one else even remembers. The mind is a powerful thing, but it is not always your friend. It is a tool, and like any tool, it works best when you use it intentionally, not when it uses you. The deeper truth is this: you are not overthinking because you are broken. You are overthinking because you care. Because you have a deep need to understand, to connect, to get it right. The goal is not to silence your mind. The goal is to stop letting it run the show. In the end, the thoughts will come. They always do. They will arrive with urgency and importance, demanding your attention, insisting that this time it matters. And you can choose. You can follow them into the maze again, chasing a resolution that never comes. Or you can let them pass. You can sit in the quiet and trust that you do not need to have it all figured out. That you are allowed to not know. That you are allowed to wait. That you are allowed to breathe. Because in the end, the real question was never about finding the perfect answer. It was about learning to live with the questions and discovering that you are enough, even without the answers.